Welcome to Act Out. I'm Eleanor Goldfield, and this is your tipping point. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is not a ferret that I killed. It's a windscreen, and I'm too lazy and too broke to go buy a different one. Good. Now that that's settled, know your rights. From Baltimore to Seattle, Ferguson to LA, constitutional and human rights are being usurped every day by authorities with a jacked up sense of importance, a penchant for bullying, and a loaded gun. But you have rights. And these are rights that apply to you regardless of any stipulation, regardless of whether you're a U.S. citizen, regardless of whether you look like you just snorted 10 lines of coke off your dashboard. These rights apply to you. So, let's Google that shit. Now, if you Google that shit, there are tons of resources, from videos to images to articles to PDFs. So unlike previous Google that shit segments, I won't tell you to just click on the first one. Peruse a bit, find one you like, and I'll see you back here in a minute. So let's highlight some main points. A cop can walk up and talk to you whenever they feel like it. In a perfect world, or hell, even a little less fucked up world, they'd walk up to you and talk to you not to mess with you, but to see if you're okay or because they have a reasonable suspicion that some shit is up. Now, if they do walk up and talk to you without any reasonable suspicion, they can't detain you. So if you ask, "Am I free to go?" and they say yes, you can just quietly and calmly walk away. I don't recommend this, no matter how tempting it may be. If they say you can't leave, you gotta stay. As you know from CSI, SVU, and all those other acronyms, you do have the right to remain silent. If you choose to speak and ask why you're being detained, they don't actually have to tell you. And here's where the abuse of power comes in. Again, in a slightly less fucked up world, a cop might stop a shady character, aka not every black person, say they can't leave based on a legitimate reasonable suspicion, give them a pat down, confiscate the weapon or the missing child, and take them downtown. But as we know, shit doesn't always play out that way. Reasonable suspicion to detain or frisk you is not supposed to be based on their level of boredom or racism at the time of the encounter. For example, if they stop you solely for speeding, they can't frisk you. Why? Because they suspected you of speeding, and that's got fuck all to do with what you do or do not keep in your pants. However, if you act like a dick, threaten the cop, yell at them, call him pig, shithead, etc., then they probably will frisk you, even if you were just speeding. Why? Because you're acting like a threatening ass gives them reason to believe that there's something more than a heavy right foot in the car. So as much as it may bruise your ego, don't be a cunt to the cops. And I'm not saying this because I haven't been. I have gotten myself into deeper shit than is necessary simply by talking back, being a smartass, and pushing their buttons. It won't help you, and I will get back to this later. Moving on, if they do frisk you, also don't act threateningly. You have the right to say, "I don't consent to a search." This should technically stop them from doing anything but the safety pat-down. However, again, if you're an ass, or they're an ass, they may carry on and even escalate that simple pat-down to a full search that looks more like a bear going through a camping tent filled with beef jerky. Which brings me to my final point. Not only is it advisable to not threaten or try to fight a cop, it's also advisable to record your encounter in some way. Unless you have a GoPro on your head at the time, you might not be able to film them, but you can turn on the voice record on your phone, for example. Or use a police abuse app. Yep, there is an app for that. Several, actually. So let's Google that shit. And you might say, but seriously, why bother? Cameras didn't stop this cop, didn't bring him to justice, so why bother? Because ignorance isn't bliss, it's weakness. Knowledge, as corny as it sounds, is power. Knowing your rights and using technology to capture the abuse of power are steps. They are steps towards justice that will not come overnight, but will come if we work for it. These rights are the framework for a police force that actually does protect and serve. They are the framework for a democratic republic, something that waved bye-bye a while ago, but we can chase that shit down. These apps, these sites, these organizations are knowledge, power. They are the tools of a movement created by we the people, online and offline, to combat injustice. This is why bother. This is forwards. This is progress. It might not always feel like it, but we are moving. Justice is on the other side of we the people raising a fist, a voice, and saying, enough. When those charged with keeping the peace incite violence, there will be no peace till they are removed from the streets. And cops, this is for you too. I implore those good cops out there to not hide behind a veil of blue, but instead step forward, condemn the conduct of abusive officers, and take it upon yourself to not be one of them. Don't think for 1 second that the powers that be give a shit about you. You're a pawn, and they've outfitted these pawns with anti-aircraft missiles, not to keep the peace, but to keep their piece of the pie, their enormous lopsided piece, to keep inequality, to keep injustice. Stand up, fight back. We're on the same side.